Today on Talk with Claude, we asked Paul Elam to tell us about his book, Men-Women Relationships.
Does she cut you off in the bedroom? Does she get very cold and incommunicative and punishing? Because what she's telling you, if she does, is that she doesn't want a man who says no to anything she wants, and that she can't handle a man. Now, if she has a normal amount of disappointment and moves on, you might have a keeper there.
During the baby, there's no way to bring in the cash. So there's a biological reason for that to be there, right?
Yes, and it's been codified in many cultures, particularly in Indian culture. There's, I don't know whether it's still the case, but I know for a great long period of time, it was illegal not to have a hypergamous marriage. A woman could not marry to a lower class and a man. But I think even more importantly, that we've taken the concept of hypergamy in the red pill community and expanded it to illustrate other aspects of being female and male outside the realm of marriage. And that is that women as a whole tend to better deal themselves all the time. When they're young, they got one boyfriend that's got a good job, he makes $100,000 a year. They meet a guy that makes $150,000 a year, and oh, bye-bye, I'm going off with him. Or in another situation, they get married to a guy that's a decent provider who makes a lot of money and puts them in a fine home with fine clothing. And then the pool boy who has a six-pack ab starts looking very good to them, and they better deal themselves sexually. Hypergamy, as we talk about it in the red pill community, is more about women better dealing themselves than just the real narrow definition of the matter of marriage, that women are always looking to step up. And even within a particular relationship, if you talk to men, one of the universal things you see is like, no matter what I do, it's not enough. And she can't stand to see me just sit down and take a break. If I lay down on the couch, she'll find something for me to do in 30 seconds and remind me of what I'm not doing. They're constantly trying to get more, trying to get more, trying to get more. And this goes back to biological roots that, men had to protect and provide, and women had to take care of children, so they had to gather resources. And it was real important to do that. But that legacy behavior isn't very healthy. It's too much stress on a relationship, too much stress on men, and men tend to capitulate. They're like, oh, you promised you would fix the refrigerator or do this or do that. What are you doing laying down? And men don't say, I'm going to take a nap, leave me alone. They say, okay, I'll get up and do the thing. And then they go get it with their buddies and they say, man, she never leaves me alone. And again, you're doing it, guy.
Yeah.
You're doing it. You can say no to your wife. You can say no to your girlfriend. It's really easy. They may not like it.
Or they'll say, I have to go get a tool at the garage, and then you don't see them again for a while.
Yep. Or, they say fine, which is a promise that they're going to retaliate. You hear that ubiquitous fine out of a woman, and implicit in that is the knowledge that she's going to retaliate. That's somebody to get rid of. That's somebody that's telling you they don't deserve to be your partner. You're going to say no, you're going to take care of yourself for 5 minutes, so I got to figure out a way to punish you for it? Are you kidding me?
And what usually follows is something wrong? No.
No,
no.
I'm fine.
Yeah. It's almost like they measure their value by how much they can get their man to work and to go and to do things, right? It's a direct insult to their sense of self.
Oh, absolutely. They've got a man laying on the couch doing nothing. What kind of woman are they? And they're not gathering resources. They're not getting things done. Again, it's really, the onus is on men. The responsibility is on men to not live that way. I think this is absolutely a contributor. When men lose their jobs and kill themselves, I mean, one of the things we got to understand that the suicide rate has a 4 times incidence between men and women. Men are 4 times more likely to kill themselves. During a divorce or a breakup or financial catastrophe, it goes up to 11 to 1. And think about that. When men lose their sense of purpose and they've invested everything in being a provider, all of a sudden they can't provide, figure probably ought to just die. Maybe I can take care of them with the insurance money if I can make it look good. This is why I really advocate so strongly for men to fight this stuff at the core within themselves. This is about our survival, and it's about our happiness. And too many men really never consider their own happiness in life at all. It's like happy wife, happy life. Or if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. Or other really sick, mentally unhealthy ways to live. And if there's anything I wanted this book to point out, it's that.
Yeah, and those red flags show up fairly early on when you know what to look for. I mean, you talk about men suiciding when they lose their job because they lose their sense of purpose and ability to provide for their family or potential mate. If women ask you on the first date subtly, so what do you do, or how much money do you make? I mean, run for the door, right? You want to learn
what
about
kind of car do you drive?
Yeah, that's another one. So.
Oh yeah, and classy women will be subtle about it. I mean, I don't mind if a woman, in a matter of conversation, asks me about my profession, and I get a sense with women about what it is they're sizing up. They may well just want to know, okay, does he do anything decent for a living, or is he a busboy? And I don't mind women asking those kind of questions. I don't mind it at all. But when they want to get down to what do you make?
Yeah.
I love Terrence Popp's reply to that. When a woman asks him how much money he makes, he says, why don't you tell me what the serving temperature is of a pork shoulder? I love it. I love it. And I think that is the way men ought to respond to that kind of garish questioning from women. It's awful. What do you mean, how much do I make? Why is it any of your business how much money I make? And she's telling you, she's sizing you up financially and by nothing else. So again, that should be case open, case closed. She's done.
Isn't that the equivalent of, so are those real tips?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and there's all the subtlety of a 2x4 in the back of their head. What are some flags that you would say if somebody's entering the dating scene, a young man? What kind of things would you tell them to look for, since we're on the subject?
ABS, always be screening. One, it's not so much what you look for, it's going in with the mentality that you're willing to screen out garbage. If you go into the dating scene with, can I score? Can I get me some? Then have fun. I'll see you when you write me in a couple of years telling me about how your life is destroyed. Go in with the mentality that you've got standards, that you're worth decent treatment. Those are the basics. I mean, we will talk about, and I'm happy to get to specific things to look for. But the most important thing is, what kind of person are you going into this? Do you have standards? Do you care at all? I mean, what matters to you? Is just her being hot enough, and that's all that matters to you? That's fine. That's the way it is for a lot of guys, especially younger guys. They only care about that. They're not very smart, younger guys, because the fact of the matter is that you can find attractive women that have some decency about them too, but you have to always be screening. And that is when you get women that ask you how much you make, when you get women that in the first 5 minutes of meeting them are telling you, way too much information. I mean, that is a big, big tell right there. When somebody's giving you too much information too soon, get away from there. That is a classic sign of a personality disorder. Somebody that is just, love bombing is another one. It's a really bad sign, and it'll play right to your ego too. A woman will sit there with you on a second date. Oh, you're the most wonderful man I've ever met. She doesn't know your fucking middle name. And she's telling you.
It's usually combined with how much of a jerk the other guy was, right?
Oh, yes. These guys were all bastards. You're the good man. You're the one good man. And putting you up on that pedestal, which she will invariably knock you off of once you disappoint her in any way, and you will. Another thing you do with women is you tell them no. Test them. Shit test them. Men should have their own shit tests. Tell them no. And I don't mean, my dog died. Will you help me take him to the vet so we can dispose of the body? I'm not saying say no to that.
That's a very specific example, actually.
That would be pretty cold. I'm going to give a woman a yes on that one. Or if a family member dies and she wants you to go to the funeral, don't pick that to say no to. But if she says, I want to go see some really stupid chick flick, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Not into that. I won't ask you to go see the next Terminator flick. You don't ask me to go see chick flicks. We'll have that deal. Tell her no, and then you watch very, very carefully what she does in response. Does she come back with fine? Again, promising retribution. Does she cut you off in the bedroom? Does she get very cold and incommunicative and punishing? Because what she's telling you, if she does, is that she doesn't want a man who says no to anything she wants, and that she can't handle the man. Now, if she has a normal amount of disappointment and moves on, you might have a keeper there. If she could say, oh, I really wish you would have gone, or she may try asking you again, but gives up, and it doesn't turn into a wall between the two of you. And that's what you look for. If you say no, if she builds a wall between the two of you, she's garbage. Kick her to the curb and go find another woman. And you'll go through a few that way. Because there's another part of this, Claude, that I want to talk about that is connected. There's also the fact of the matter that, this is the way we socialize women. That there's a lot of decent women out there with some very bad characteristics who happen to be trainable over a period of time, if you want to invest the energy. You have to rule out personality disorders. You have to rule out women that are really bad news. And if you're looking for women that are really bad news, if you're looking for those traits, you'll see them when they show up. If you're blind to them, nothing matters. But there are women who will fail some of your shit tests, but who you may want to hang on to and see if you can sit down and converse with and have a conversation with and say, look, here's what I did. I said, no, I didn't want to do something. And the next thing I know, you don't want to talk to me. What's up with that? Let's talk about this. Let's figure out what's going on. Because to be honest, I just couldn't be with a woman who would never allow me to say no to wanting to do something. And I wouldn't want you to expect a man to treat you that way. Some women can be trained, and some women are easier to train than others. And a lot of women, a great many of them, cannot be trained. They're never going to be trained. It's going to be yes or nothing, her way or the highway. She's going to have the last word. I had a date with a woman 25 years ago. I never forget. I talked to her on the phone the next day, and she said, I'd like to go out with you again. I just need you to know one thing. I always have the last word. I said, run that by me again. She said, I always have the last word about everything. And I said, well, thanks for telling me, but not this time you don't. Click. Get rid of them when they're like that. When they're bold about their arrogance and their unfairness, when they brag about being a bitch.
Yeah, it brings to mind one of the points you bring in your book about differentiating between self-esteem and self-respect. You never want to check your self-respect at the door, and everything will flow from that. If you have any amount of self-respect, yeah, I mean, the self-esteem is important in that generally relationships don't work if you're not with an equal, right? So if you haven't been taking care of yourself and you're not worth much because you haven't made yourself to be worth much, then you can't expect much. Now, having said that, there's no reason, even in that situation, to lose your self-respect. You have to have a minimum of values, and you have to set the bar somewhere and hold it there and be willing to let her go. And that's not to say you want to leave every relationship go the minute something goes wrong. But if you're not willing to let a woman go, which is a point that you cover extensively in many sections, then you don't have a shoe to stand on, or however
and I will provide a link you'll get below in the description area to a piece I wrote on the difference between self-esteem and self-respect, and why it's important to know the difference, and why self-respect is much more important in the end than self-esteem. And to go over just a couple of points. One, it's measurable. You know when you're treating yourself with respect and when you're not. You don't always know about self-esteem, about, where do you put your feelings about how well you feel about yourself on a scale. But self-respect, are you letting people talk trash to you, be abusive with you? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you exercising boundaries when you're dealing with a woman? You know these things. You can measure them every moment of every day. And if you're sacrificing your self-respect, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah, and I have a particularly soft point in my heart for families where children are involved. And so the man wants to stick around and tough out maybe with that. But the thing that has to be said is that was going on way before you had children. If you don't have the self-respect and now there are children involved, you don't want to take off on them, abandoning them to crazy. That's still on you, because you volunteered for it, and there you are.
That stuff was there before you got married.
Yeah.
The stuff, and that's a really important point for guys to understand. The stuff that makes women good bets or bad bets presents itself immediately. You should be able to tell within your first 10 or 12 exposures to a woman, if you're watching carefully, what kind of person she is. One of the sort of crippling things for women about the lack of expectations on them and all the lies they get away with, I'm in my sexual prime, all the stuff we've already talked about, is that nobody ever calls them on anything. They're not aware of what their behavior is saying about them as a person. They're just being who they are. They're just showing that they're a woman to get their way and to feel entitled. So they'll show you right up front every time. They will present who they are. They'll show you who they are when you tell them no to something the first time. They'll show you what kind of person they are every time. It'll never fail. The only thing that can fail in that situation is you. And when you fail, you pay the price.
Now, having said that, you have you have strong advice concerning marriage in your book. Straight out, don't do it. Yeah, and that's actually, you froze up there. That's actually
the power of Christ compels you.
Now, that's not something you see very often in a book on men-women relationship as advice, right?
That's right.
Now,
my advice is that you do not have, and look, I've got married friends. I respect their marriages. I respect their decisions. But in this day and age, in 2019, for a man to put himself at risk of the state, because you don't marry a woman anymore. The woman is, in most cases, temporary. We know this. The average marriage ends in divorce. So we know that the connection to the woman is temporary. The connection to the state is forever. And when you put your assets, your work, your life on the line and make that all that vulnerable to the state, look, my inbox is filled with guys. I get letters regularly from guys in prison. It's heartbreaking. It is absolutely heartbreaking. There's nothing I can do for any of them. And the guys that write me all the time, man, you wrecked my business. She's took all the money, and the cops say there's nothing they can do about it, and she said I abused the kids, and next thing you know, I got a restraining order on me. I can't go back in my home. And what can I do? And I feel terrible. And I have to write these guys back and say, I can't tell you anything. There's nothing to do. Get a lawyer. Do your best. Try to survive. But I don't have any Pollyanna advice for guys going through this. And I get this stuff all the time. You wouldn't believe. I mean, I've got probably 14,000, I think, right now, unopened email in my Voice for Men account. A lot of those are from guys in trouble that I can't even keep up with the messages. And it starts with the legal marriage. Don't get illegally married. That's my advice. Do not live in a situation where the state can decide that you're married, which can happen. Australia is terrible about this. If you're in Australia, the state, once you've been there for, 6 months, a year, whatever, the state says you're married.
Yeah, I think it's 6 months in Canada.
Yeah, they'll come and take your stuff. Just like you have to be on top of the game here. So what I tell guys is that it's really, really pennies on the dollar to go get some legal advice where you live about how do you make sure that you're not legally married. Because I'm not saying don't love somebody. I'm not saying don't be connected to them, don't have a great relationship. You can have all those things, but you better be careful because, again, Australia is the worst example because you don't even have to live with somebody in Australia. You just got to sleep with them enough. And boom, you're de facto married. It's a horrible situation. In that case, I would either move countries or I would not. I would be careful how many times I slept with somebody before I moved on to something else. But no, don't get married. Don't get common law married. Don't make yourself vulnerable. Don't share a bank account. Don't put your assets in her name. Don't do anything like that. Don't buy a car and have her on the title. That's her car then. It's done. Once her name is on anything, and the state will take that and give it to her. It'll happen every time. Don't do it. And if she won't accept an arrangement, unless it means you're legally vulnerable, what does that tell you? Tells you everything you need to know about her. That's why guys get married and they say, well, I'd like a prenup. A prenup? Don't you trust me? Oh, don't worry. We don't have to have a prenup. Tell Paul McCartney, who said he would never get a prenup, and then it cost him $50 million from an opportunistic little skank. That was it. So anyway, now, you want to get married, you go ahead, but please don't write me when it goes bad, because I can't help it, and it hurts my feelings. I wish I could. I wish I could help all these guys, but you have to. This is preventative medicine that you have to practice. It's not something you can ameliorate afterwards.
And I totally get your point there, Paul. Here's the issue I have. I think in the thought of marriage, the idea behind marriage is to have commitment from both partners to stay together for the benefit of children, right? And historically, that's been the case. It's almost as though modern marriage is actually just an industry to produce single parents, because you're almost guaranteeing that what is it, 50, 60% end in divorce, but then you have the children there, and the children serve as pawns within the marriage to get more resources. And it doesn't seem like in our case in Canada here, it's not any different if you're just living together, common law. But we do know that having an intact family is the best situation for the kids. So, I mean, my question is, what do you do with that? If you can't get married, if you're living together, you're going to be considered married. You could have a prenup, I suppose. But what's your best case scenario there?
Well, my answer to that is that we still have to stay grounded in reality. 50 to 60% of those first-time marriages will end in divorce. A higher percentage of second marriages and even a higher percentage of third marriages are going to end in divorce. It does, you're right, it is an industry that produces single mothers, and single mothers are an industry that keeps our prisons full, that keeps gangs populated, that provides a need for social services for teen pregnancies and truancy and juvenile delinquency. This is a massive business on the end. So until there is a marriage strike sufficient to cause governmental alarm to change the laws, don't do it. Don't have children. I mean, again, I hate to say that. It's not like I take pleasure in this, and you're absolutely right. I want to make a point of saying this. The family, the nuclear family, as we've historically defined it, has been the backbone of our society for a long, long time. It is what produces functional children who grow up to become functional adults and who contribute to society and who cure disease and land rocket ships on the moon and do all sorts of other great, wonderful things. That's what nuclear families provide. But the reality is still that we have a family law apparatus that destroys nuclear families. That's what it does by design. Volunteering to be vulnerable to that is a mistake. It is a mistake. I would say if you want to be a single father, do what you need to do to make yourself fit for adoption or surrogacy and raise a child on your own. Because the numbers for single fathers are good. Fathers who raise children on their own do just about as well as two-parent families. The numbers for single mothers are abysmal. They're terrible. But yeah, I mean, as much as I'd like to say, well, we really need to give this nuclear family thing a shot because it's the only thing that keeps us going, the fact of the matter is we're already destroying those families. We have a court system that is designed to destroy those families and destroy the children in them. So the only reasonable response to that is to not participate.
I mean, ironically, reading your book, a thought occurred to me is that, as strange as it might sound, maybe what feminism has been pushing for is what's going to save us. It's actually more common in the area where I am to have partners contribute equally financially to the household. I know that's the case for me. So there's no, her staying home and me providing the wealth. If we had to split up, and the Canadian courts seem fairly good at, from what I hear, compared to the American courts in that regard, where they have more of an abstraction as to what the gender of the parents are, and split things according to what would be equal. And fathers are, maybe it's not 50-50, but they are given the opportunity to do a 50-50 split. I had a lot of friends whose marriages have fallen apart, but they get 1 week on, 1 week off. I don't think it's the best situation for the kids, but maybe that the fact that there's no great winnings to have, and as a matter of fact, I mean, after divorce, from what I can tell, both parents fall into more poverty than they were before, the man and the woman.
The standard of both, yes. Well, it's just, how could it not be that way when you're talking about maintaining two households off the same amount of money that was there when you were running one household? You're both going to lower the standard of living. And hey, if the Canadians have figured out something in their family law system to keep things reasonably sane, then I would look at the facts on the ground and make decisions accordingly. I'm just only speaking as an American here. Our systems, no way. They're terrible. They are family destruction machines. Normally, you would think, what would be reasonable to do? Okay, a marriage is going to end in divorce. So the idea of the court, if you're going to have governmental involvement, should be, how do we restructure this family so that it thrives post-divorce? How do we do it so that the children have most access to both parents and the functionality is there? And how do we help this reshape this family? No, we draw lines, go to war with lawyers, make allegations, issue restraining orders, give one parent property in the form of children, and say that's what we have to offer broken families, is to break them some more. And so in that, I can't suggest getting involved in it.
No, and I'd say here you have more opportunity for equality that way. What I've been finding is that the father who tolerated crazy behavior within the marriage still tolerates it after. Still goes out to, and that's just a shit test for the divorced wife. Like, oh, would you come over and mow my lawn? Nobody's done it, or like some crazy stuff like that. And then they'll still complain that, he comes by when he's not supposed to or something, but she invited him over. There's a lot of craziness out there. And once again, I think it's up to the fathers to have that self-respect and say, well, listen, this is where we're at. You chose this. For the most part, the woman chooses that divorce. And so they have to live with those consequences, I think.
There are no victims, just volunteers.
You said it.
Sad but true. It is, guys. You get what you put up with in life.
We've talked about men, we've talked about women, and we've discussed some of the relationship possibilities as far as what's traditional and what not to do. Let's talk about this concept of modern masculinity and how it constitutes a plague nowadays.
Well, there's a long, complicated version, which you can read in the book and under the section of the plague of modern masculinity. But let's put it in a more condensed nutshell for the purpose of this discussion. There is a big problem with modern masculinity, and there is a problem with traditional masculinity. Again, the feminists have this really strange way of semi-identifying a problem correctly. I mean, they sort of get in the right neighborhood of a problem, and then they veer off into stupid very quickly and get things very messy and very wrong. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to offer that there is something wrong fundamentally with masculinity in the modern world, where, like we were talking about earlier, when we run on codes of chivalry and protection and provision that's blind, in a world where women are enormously powerful and enormously capable and have opportunity in abundance and a lot of special consideration, that the practice of old style chivalry is a defining part of masculinity is a kind of form of insanity. It is a real problem, and that is part of masculinity, and we see that in the social justice soy boy crowd. The guys with the man buns, and I think Greg Gutfeld calls it a dork knob, with the big bun on the back of the head, who basically emulates everything he thinks feminists want to hear come out of his mouth.
I think you just insulted a lot of people in my hometown here.
Okay, well, you can imagine how sorry I am about that. And these guys think they're part of a new breed of masculinity, a more sensitive, gentle, feminine. I mean, it's really strange, a feminine type of masculinity, because they bought the myth that feminists sell, which is that all things masculine are pretty much bad and all things feminine are pretty much good. And they attribute things erroneously to both groups. Like with femininity, it's about compassion and nurturing. Well, guess what? Men are compassionate. They really are, and they're nurturing. They're also rough and tumble. There's no doubt about it. But if you look at throughout history at any of the great masters of describing matters of the human heart, they were men, all of them. Every masterful poet in human history, all the fathers of psychology were fathers of psychology for a reason, because there weren't any mothers. And these are all compassionate men dedicated to studying the every nuance of the human heart and of the human mind and psyche. Yet these are somehow attributed as a masculine or as a feminine trait. And you hear feminists say often that if women were in charge, there would be no war. And of course, they didn't consult Golda Meir about that, or Margaret Thatcher, or Indira Gandhi, or any number of European monarchs that were female that engaged in war. Turns out, historical studies, women or heads of state are more prone to engage in war than male heads of state. But that's a different point. And of course, masculine traits, they consider aggression, oppression, control, any of these more negative qualities are all masculine. And they believe that they've created a new male in the feminine mold who is really just a self-deprecating, self-loathing sycophant for feminist ideologues. And that, as a brand of masculinity, is, to me, the plague of modern masculinity. It is the legions of soy boys that are out there right now thinking that they've reinvented masculinity and they represent the future. They would never represent the future of anything. If you want things done, you need masculine energy, real masculine energy, and we're not getting it from that crowd. So they bring also their servile nature into relationships. And again, if you read through the theme of the entire book, my whole point in this, it becomes obvious, is to say that men need to have not just agree by rote with everything that women say. Men need to hold their ground. They need to have their own values and assert themselves. That breed of new male doesn't do that. He says, believe the woman. And he chants, women hold up half the sky, and all sorts of craziness like that. So it is that form of masculinity that I'm criticizing. And traditional masculinity, to the extent that it is still practiced mindlessly at times in the face of evidence that it doesn't serve us. Men do need to change, I believe. They really do, but not in the way feminists want them to change. The way men need to change is to start looking at the fact that they matter, that their dreams matter, their aspirations matter, the things that hurt them matters. What they want in life matters. What they want to do from day to day, from that to what they want to do with their entire lives has to matter. It has to count for something, instead of the only thing being their defining characteristics of being protection and provision for women. We need to get past both of those forms of dysfunctional masculinity, I believe, into a masculinity that holds on to traditions that serve men, which many of them do, our stoicism, our willingness to stay focused and push forward and make progress and to shut the world out in order to get things done. This is something that women don't understand about men, is that they get resentful when we can sit and focus on a football game for 3 hours and say, how do you watch that for 3 hours? Because you're into every nuance and every move, which is how we end up landing people on the moon and doing things like that. That world of men actually works. And all we need to do at this point is honor the fact that women have opportunities galore. They don't need us as unpaid bodyguards. And they need to damn well start taking care of themselves and allow men to do the same. And that's my pitch on that.
Yeah, and I'd say ironically, it's exactly the type of man that feminists seem to describe as being desirable that women don't want around. And they'll be the first ones to get offered, oh, well, maybe we should go polyamorous, or and that's just code word for maybe you should be a cuck.
Yes, absolutely. Let's be polyamorous. In other words, you be a cuck. And the thing that I think most soy boys have in common is that they sleep alone. These are not traits that women, I don't care what feminists tell you, there's a reason. And I noticed this in my 30s when I was reevaluating everything about women. I was like, why is it that, there's a guy standing there with flowers wilting in his hand, dressed in a nice suit, got a decent job, and this woman hops on the back of a Harley with some dude who barely notices she's there, but that's where she wants to be. Look, you can take all the gender studies classes you want. You can have a really good looking man bun, and it's not going to change the fact that women are attracted to strength and security in men. They are.
It's great if you want to spend your life in the friend zone.
Yes.
It's great for that. And you'll be giving yourself day in, day out to just at no avail.
Or if you want to pay for and raise another man's son,
that too.
and tell yourself what a great guy you are for doing that, you're welcome to do it. And she will be happy for you to do it so she can go have sex with the guy that she really wants to have sex with. These guys are losers all the way around. And I don't mean that in the normal pejorative sense. I mean, everything that they really want inside, because they want the same thing that all men do. They want to be loved. They want to be connected. They want to be accepted. They want to be approved of. It's everything that every man wants. And they're going about the most servile, sycophantic way to try to get that. And it fails. It blows up in their face every time.
Yeah. And to speak on their behalf, they've probably had that trained into them very young by a single mom and they watched their family get destroyed and said, oh, well, I'm going to do better than my father. And then they are groveling on their knees.
And they were raised by mothers that admonished them because they were just like their terrible fathers. And now they're living a life proving that they're not their terrible fathers. They're the absolutely woman-worshiping, pitiful character that they've become. It's sad. But guess what? One red pill and all that stuff ends.
That's right. You see differently after you swallow that red pill. So we're coming to the end here. Any final words for the audience?
Buy my book. No, that's not the bottom works, but no, I do appreciate those who have parted with some of their hard-earned money to buy the book. I hopefully have it reasonably priced. It's available on Amazon. What I encourage the men who read it to do is to understand that this is meant to also, above anything else, this is meant to be the exact opposite of feminism. I often get accused, and I have been in the media, and I have been by people on the internet, I hate MRAs, they're just like feminists. No, they're not. Absolutely not. What you will not find one word of in this book is victimhood, not one bit. Everything is on the individual. I don't believe in giving people outs to blame their misfortune on others in life when our choices is what shapes our lives. And I take that philosophy into this. And that's what I believe the real strength of red pill philosophy is that it puts us in the driver's seat. We don't need government programs. We don't need special laws. We don't need anything from anybody to live a red pill life. Nothing. Absolutely. There's no waiting. There's no big oppressive boogeyman out there that we're scared of and that we need help to overcome. We don't need to dismantle gynocentrism like they want to dismantle patriarchy. What we need to do is look at the gynocentrism in here and do something about that. And that's all you need to change your world. And I do believe, honestly, that if you read this book with an open mind, it'll give you a way to do that.
I can say for myself, I'm not as big a reader as I should be, but that book reads really well. As a matter of fact, it's hard not to hear your voice as we're reading. I know some of the text comes from A Voice for Men podcast material. So it reads really well. It's packed with information, which made my note-taking all the more difficult because it was hard to condense more than that. You're straight to the point. There's no sugarcoating. And you're not going to take 2-3 ways around the subject. You get the information you need, and you don't have to take a whole lot of time to do it. So highly recommend on my part. Where can we find the rest of your work?
Well, the rest of my work is through my Amazon authors account. You can find the other books I've co-authored, particularly those with Peter Wright on gynocentrism and a new form of psychology for men. Also, the book I co-authored with Dr. Tara Palmatier, Say Goodbye to Crazy. That was actually a book intended for women whose husbands are being stalked and abused by former partners, and how to deal with that. It's anti-gynocentric as anything else I've done. But you can find my videos. There's a library of nearly 300 videos now at An Ear for Men on YouTube. You can find a collection of my essays at anearformen.com and some more of my writing at avoiceformen.com.
And if people want to contribute to your work, I know I have a Patreon account, Talk with Claude at Patreon.
Yes, you can go to An Ear for Men on Patreon. There will be a link below there. Another benefit of that too, I do men's groups online every Saturday. And we have another one that's facilitated by another group member every Thursday, but I facilitate the ones on Saturdays. The minimum amount to pledge on Patreon for that is $1 a month. So $1 a month gets you into 4 90-minute groups per month with a bunch of red pill guys. We have fantastic discussions in there. We have single guys, MGTOW guys, married guys, all red pill, all talking about this challenge of living life as a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, which is what blue pill or red pill life is like for people in a blue pill world. But those groups are fantastic. Like I said, $1 a month on that gets you in. And I appreciate the support because every dime counts.
Absolutely. Thank you for a great talk. Hopefully we can have you back on the show at some later date. And
it would be my pleasure.
That's fantastic. Would you do me the honors of the last, the final goodbyes? When I heard that on A Voice for a Man, I just about fell off my chair the first time. And I said to myself, I wish I had thought of that. So please do me the honors.
Well, in that case, I'll be happy to. I want to say to everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this, even if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.